body actually has somewhat of a body fat thermostat. And this is a region in the brain that actually has receptors for a hormone called leptin. And leptin is actually produced by our fat cells. And the more fat cells we accumulate, the more leptin we'll begin to produce. And when leptin binds to its receptors, it will actually promote the production of specific proteins that help regulate our appetite and increase our metabolic expenditure. Some of the proteins are actually hormones with an appetite suppressive effect, and other proteins are actually used to increase the amount of fat that we utilize. And while unfortunately we can't change what it is, each of us has a specific body fat set point in which the brain feels comfortable being at. And when we exceed this set point by putting on excess body fat, we'll produce more leptin, have a reduced appetite, and an increased metabolism. And conversely, when we fall below this set point, we'll have a decrease in leptin, which means we'll have an increased hunger and we won't have the metabolism boosting effects. And in both scenarios, if we go over, we'll end up losing weight and returning to the body fat set point. And if we fall under, we'll have an increased appetite and end up gaining the weight back and returning to the body fat set point. With that being said, one of the issues that occurs in obesity is that we accumulate so much body fat and have so much leptin production, we begin to develop what's called leptin resistance. So in order to get leptin inside of the brain, it actually has to get through what's called the blood-brain barrier. And this is just a barrier between our brain and our bloodstream that only allows specific molecules through. And on this barrier, there are leptin receptors that will actually uptake the leptin from our bloodstream and release it into areas of the brain where it can bind and start having all of its effects. Well, when we have extremely high levels of circulating leptin because we have excessive body fat, we actually reduce the number of leptin receptors on this barrier, meaning that less leptin can actually get into the brain to suppress our appetite and promote an increased metabolism. And in extreme circumstances like this, we actually need more leptin in order to have the same signal. And the only way to have more leptin is to have more body fat. So in a sense, these people have actually changed their body fat set point to be much higher because of this leptin resistance. With that being said, fasting, exercise, and fasted exercise actually seem to be able to increase our leptin sensitivity. So we can actually restore proper leptin signaling by putting ourselves in a state in which the cells are actually exposed to slightly low energy. And people who are overweight will actually benefit even more from this, because when they do return to eating or get out of this low energy state, they will still have a much larger production of leptin than a person who is leaner. But since they put themselves through this energy deficit to increase their leptin sensitivity again, they will have very strong leptin signaling and have a very suppressed appetite and increased metabolism. And while it's one of many mechanisms, this is one of the reasons that someone who is overweight can actually fast for prolonged periods of time. And even when they go back to eating, they're not entirely that hungry. The fasting actually allowed them to reset their leptin signaling, so they're getting a very strong appetite suppressive effect.